everyone, it's me, Carol, again with another part of our series on the Pythagorean triangle. What I'm going to do today is begin discussing how to interpret and analyze what I'm going to call, going forward now, is your six-pointed star, or also known as the Star of David. There are multiple dimensions to your template, your six-pointed star, and we will begin step by step by diagnosing it, interpreting it, evaluating it, comparing it, connecting all the dots to what I'd like to call the layers in this template. Today, we are going to discuss the number 1 in the Star of David, which is going to be here on the bottom left-hand corner. So it's going to be very helpful if you take out your personal template, your personal six-pointed star, and follow along with me. Here on your screen, you can see the example of the one that I've been using right along with the birthday. That's June 12, 1974. Okay, so what we will be doing today is discussing the characteristics of number 1. Its placement here on the Star of David, the bottom, the quantity of that number and the meaning, and then we're also going to discuss if you don't have a number 1 in your Star of David. Okay, let me move these aside. There are some generalities that I think are important that everybody understand when we're looking at the concept of why we have reoccurring numbers. There are 9 placements in the six-pointed star. The most numbers you can have in your date of birth are 8. So realize that you're going to have places, multiple places possibly, where there are no numbers. Now, what that means, when there are numbers missing, it signifies sometimes weaknesses, but they could be corrected with other numbers and configurations, as well as your life lesson number. We're going to discuss that entailed as we continue on these series. Now, where there are multiple numbers, and in our example, the only place where this individual has multiple numbers is in the number 1, which we're going to be discussing today. But multiple numbers, what they indicate when they appear in any given area of your six-pointed star is usually strengths, sometimes extremes, or imbalances. And again, we have to look at the complete layout of the numbers. Now, important to think about these imbalances are there for a purpose. And of course, we want everything to be balanced. We want everything in life to be balanced. We want to know that our particular six-pointed star is perfect. We have all these gifts. Natural. That isn't the case. We're born with lessons. We're born with obstacles. And like you've heard me say before, those obstacles sometimes becomes our strength. So through that struggle to achieve balance in your own six-pointed star, you start learning about yourself. You start learning about the energy of these numbers and why they were given to you. And it is through that you can regulate, decide how you want to use these numbers to increase, to profit by, to end struggles and challenges, going back to the idea that we are here to learn, and going back to the idea that the more knowledge you know about yourself, the greater you have the power to change. So, with all of that said, the following information that I'm about to give you today, especially because we are just starting to analyze and interpret it, use these as guidelines, use these as guideposts, and realize that when you understand the value, the property, the characteristics, the power in each of the 9 numbers, and how they are displayed and how they interact in your personal template, is your blueprint. That blueprint, much like astrology, is where you decide which assets you can exemplify, those gifts, those talents, and which ones you need to temper, and how to temper them, how to use that energy somewhere else. And that's what I need you to keep in mind as we go step by step in analyzing the characteristics, understanding the properties of these numbers, and how they affect you, how they work with you. The other thing that is kind of a cliche to keep in mind, but who you are and how you perceive your personal power are in these numbers, especially the ones that are repeated. Okay, so let's begin. Let me put this aside here, because I think I would like you to see both. Not that it's necessary. You're going to be looking at your personal template. So today, all we're going to do is focus on the bottom left-hand column. If you remember from the previous video, this has to do with the mother figure, the receptive area column, that is said to be feminine in nature. Okay, let's go ahead and start out. And of course, I have everything done for you here so that you may want to take a screenshot. And you can see that I put the 6-pointed star on the left-hand part, indicating what the template would look at when we have the single ones and the double ones. Okay, first, the number 1. What I have in parentheses is how Pythagoras labeled it, viewed it, called it. Pythagoras called number 1 spirit and the monad. Okay? Things you're going to find out about the number 1 that are quite universal. Most people understand them. The number 1 is originality. It shows independence, it shows activity, and it shows leaderships. And when I talk about aspects about the number 1 in your personal 6-pointed star, it represents aspects of creation and the self. And that can be both aggressive or courageous. Now, let's go ahead and look at what it means when you have one single number 1 in your template. Well, it means that you're good with words, written or spoken, but you may lack self-confidence. Often is singular in the point of view. What do I mean by that? The person with only a number 1 in their 6-pointed star. Number 1, listen to me. Number 1, first of all, their mind, their speech can be very, very fast. And because it is 1, and I'm going to say this way, me, myself, and I, their viewpoint and the way they communicate is sometimes very singular in nature. Okay, how can that be tempered? Very quickly. How can that be tempered is having the number 2, how many number 2s, or if there isn't a number 2. That is something to consider. Now, it is an outward expression when you have one number 1, and sometimes there's difficulty in expressing of the innermost feelings. So these people, again, may be great at words, the spoken word, the written word, but when it comes to expression of how they're feeling, again, we're going to be looking at other denominators. Let's say that your life lesson number is a number 2. That would greatly balance this out. Okay, 2 number 1s in your template has the ability to understand both sides of a situation, has a competitive nature, and enjoys being heard. Out of all of the possibilities, having 2 number 1s in your template seems to be ideal. Okay? That can be off balance if we have 2 or more number 4s. It is even greater in strength, possibilities, and potential if we have 1 number 4 and 1 number 7. That is going to be another denominator that we will talk about later when we look at the potentiality of what we call combined numbers that form aspects. But for right now, 2 number 1s is the ability to understand both sides of a situation, has a competitive nature which adds to the self-esteem, where here the number 1 with only 1 may lack self-confidence and enjoys being heard. So they like to gab and they like to talk. Okay, 3 number 1s usually are great authors, writers, and journalists, and that's what it would look like on your template. They're clearly speaking may be difficult for them. Okay, we're going to continue. Bear with me here. Oh, I have it over here. I apologize. Hold on. Here you see that I am continuing with 3 number 1s in the template. I'm just going to get up real quickly, make sure you can see that, and that's perfect on your screen. Okay, let's go over here. All right, so what does that mean? Going with a little bit more information on 3 number 1s, there can be a great sensitivity to words. What do I mean by that? Especially hurtful words, or words that can be like for me, I can give you an example. I have 3 number 1s in my template. For some reason, curse words seem to bother me. And maybe this is the conditioning of my mother, because remember, we're on that mother line. Never using the word hate. So when I hear someone say, I hate that, something happens in my electrical connections in my brain. So there's that words, they're sensitive to the spoken word, the written word, how they're expressed, the type of expression and emphasis when some words are spoken. It's also a factor in the person with 3 number 1s. And then let me go on here. There's a strong sense of self-worth when you have 3 number ones. You have organizational ability, and as I just spoke earlier, mother or mother figures have a strong influence on the individual here. Something to note, when we say there is a strong emphasis, it can be polar, it can be dual. It can also be the shadow. It can be very positive, or it can have some unconscious and some shadow aspects. So it could be positive and negative. We're dealing with 2 sides of the coin. Numbers have both very positive qualities, and then they have their shadow sides, like duality and opposites in life. Let's move on now to 4 number ones. Here we have a strong tendency to talk excessively. There's a domineering nature. Remember what I said earlier about the single one, me, myself, and I? Well, here, if it isn't balanced out with other numbers, there is that dominant nature that is highly opinionated. They have a fast speaking ability. There's a cleverness with use of words and their expression of words. And they sometimes has difficulty listening to others because it's the mind is going, the answer, how to respond, how to be heard, what needs to be said, how to maybe have the last word, to be heard, to say, I got the last word in. I want to be understood. I want to be known. This is my opinion, and that's it. All right. Last is having 5 number ones. Not only is it challenging for others to understand that individual's uniqueness, the individual with 5 or more ones usually struggles to maintain balance in their lives. For the number 4 ones and for the 5 number ones, having a number 5 in the center helps greatly. Having a number 2 tempers that brassness, that domineering nature. Okay, let's continue now with 5 number ones. We said that even that individual struggles to maintain balance in their lives. There is a tendency to overdo physically, difficulty in quieting their minds. They lack a clear understanding at times. Let me see what I try to write there. They lack a clear understanding and at times lack a positive expression of who they are, what it is they desire, and then lastly, how to relate to others on an emotional level. My experience of anyone with 5, the most they can have is 6 number ones usually in their date of birth, is their struggles to balance if they don't have a 5. It's even harder to balance if they have a 9. If you're born in the 1900s, you're going to have that 9 up there. And the way they sometimes resort, unfortunately, is to fall onto addictions. And their addictions could be in relationships, in sex, in purchasing, in gambling, and in food. Again, we have to look at the whole chart. We have to look at the life lesson number to really understand the energy, the power, the focus that 5 or more number ones have on one individual. Okay, so what about if we have, let's say, a missing number 1? And we certainly don't have that in our example. Of course, if you're born in the 19th century, you're not going to miss a number 1, and you're not going to have a missing number 9. But before, let's say from the 21st century on, we need to understand that there are going to be people who do not have a number 1. Definitely, they may have a number 9 somewhere else in their chart. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go on. But those who are, let's say, void of a number 1, the good news is number 2 has within it components of a number 1. We also have to look at that life lesson number that they have. But basically, not having a number 1, since number 1 has to do with identity and the ego to express yourself and your individuality, I feel like those of us who are born in the 21st century, and for those of you who may be born in the year 2000, right now you may be listening to this, you're 21, 22 years old possibly, there may be an interest in all this, that for many of you, you have found and discovered other avenues of how to express your nature. And that is usually outwardly, very creative, artistic. You may have expressed your nature by loving to get tattoos on your body, or your hairstyle, or the way that you dress, the way that you communicate. All of that are other ways that we're seeing that 21st century energy going into individuals as they're born. But as I said earlier, we will look at that more in depth as we continue with discovering who you are, how you can understand yourself and others when you put these numbers that you were born with in your personal 6-pointed star. Folks, if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to email me or leave it in the comment box. I find this fascinating. It's taken me years of study to get all this together. What I'm sharing with you is what I've presented in workshops, what I teach when people come in for readings, how I've diagnosed these numbers. I've learned from them. They're very versatile. Nothing is cut in stone. And what I'm sharing with you is basically what I've learned and experienced. Thanks everyone for joining me today. Have a great afternoon. Bye.